grandpa stole his first buggy in 1892. I met your grandma pig slopping in 46.
Oh, every Christmas we'd visit my Uncle Fred in prison.
And welcome to America's Family History Show. It's Extreme Genes and ExtremeGenes.com. It is Fisher here, the Radio Root Sleuth, on the program where we shake your family tree and watch the nuts fall out. This segment of the show is brought to you by FamilySearch.org. And we are loaded up today with DNA. Well, I think we all are, right? We're going to be talking to Paul Woodbury. He's the DNA specialist from LegacyTree.com in a two-part visit where we talk to him about some of the most common questions he hears all the time, and certainly questions I get as well about DNA. All kinds of stuff that you're going to find interesting and informative as you prepare to take your DNA test or prepare to analyze the information and the results that you got back. So that's good stuff coming up a little bit later on. Hey, and I also want to remind you that during the month of June, if you sign up for our weekly Genie newsletter, which is absolutely free, your name will be in the hopper for a free DNA kit we're going to be giving out and announcing on July 10th. So sign up at ExtremeGenes.com or the Extreme Genes Facebook page, the weekly Genie newsletter. Right now, it's time to head out to Boston and my good friend David Allen Lambert. He is the Chief Genealogist of the New England Historic Genealogical Society and AmericanAncestors.org. How are you, David?
Well, I'll tell you, this is my birthday month. I won't say how old I am, but I'm hoping to get, a couple of birthday cards. But nothing compares to the birthday card that this person got in a store for their grandfather out in Kansas. They got this greeting card, Fish, and on it is an old-fashioned family group photo. And as the grandfather looked at the picture, he recognized his own relative. Lo and behold, somebody at Hallmark had a person buying old photos, and it just happened to be this person's family. The chances of that are probably better to win the lottery.
Oh, yeah. No question. That's crazy. What did the card say?
Quote, "We haven't seen this much excitement since Aunt Lulu was picked up by a tornado, set down nude in the middle of the hog auction, and sold to the highest bidder." And who knows? Maybe it's been lifted from somebody's family letters.
Isn't that funny? And the odd thing about it is after they discovered all this, they went back to the store and they bought out all the copies of it, took them and then framed them and shared them with other relatives. Isn't that great?
I think it's wonderful. It almost makes you want to make up a similar card for your own family as a joke. Well, one thing that isn't a joke is the exciting news. I was on the phone with Brooke Gans from Reclaim the Records. This is a group that's been legally working to try to get records released from different states. And one of the black holes for genealogists has been getting records from the state of New York. Now, New York, unlike a lot of states, started recording vital records in the 1880s. And the problem is the death index isn't online. So you think of Ancestry or FamilySearch or places like that. They've tried for years to get it. Well, this group succeeded. And now on archive.org, by simply putting in New York State Death Index and put in a year between 1880 and 1956, our listeners will be able to pull up the actual index. It includes the town, the name, the full date of death, and the certificate number. This is amazing.
Oh, this is huge. And, they actually went and sued through the Freedom of Information Act to get these public records made public and available.
My hat's off to them because they were able to do things that a lot of us genealogists have been trying to get for years.
And by the way, you got to go online and check this out on ExtremeGenes.com. You'll find the link to it there. And you can become part of a group and help their legal efforts to make public records public and available.
Well, Fish, the other day I was thinking to myself, wouldn't it be nice to buy a summer place? Well, I wish I had known this beforehand. In Aladdin, Wyoming, they just had an auction on June 2nd where they sold off 30 acres of land. Now, you wouldn't think so much about it, but the 30 acres is the whole town. It includes a post office, a general store, and a variety of other buildings, a family home, and it was expected to get $1.5 million.
Wow, what a bargain.
It sold for a third of that. for $500,000.
$500,000?
So now someone actually owns a town legally and has a post office. I just think it's a wonderful thing. I would turn it into such a tourist stop. You know, it's funny, Fish. I go to yard sales and occasionally I see old family photos. But a strange thing happened about a year and a half ago. Someone at my public library dropped off a bag with about 100 photographs from the early 1900s right to Instamatic photos that apparently were found in a trash bin. But someone put a Post-it note to give them to me. Still don't know who they were, but there was enough identification on it that I decided, well, I should look into it eventually. Well, just like anything in genealogy, I put it aside. Well, the other day while cleaning, I found the bag. Decided that these are my family. They're not even connected to my town. I wanted to find who they were. And about an hour after being on the internet, I found the granddaughter of the woman who these photos belong to.
How cool is that?
She was over the moon happy. She had no family photos. This included all the wedding pictures from the 1930s of her grandmother and grandfather, pictures of her great-grandmother who she'd never even seen before, and they had names on them. I want someone to find a bag of my family photos and send them to me. It's a comma thing, so I'm hoping that happens eventually.
Exactly. Now, listen, before you get into your blogger spotlight, could I take it this week?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
All right. So I want to put our blogger spotlight on a place called The Past Finder. And every week, of course, we focus on somebody who's writing about genealogy. The Past Finder is authored by somebody named David Allen Lambert. And it's a brand new blog site. And David, I love it. And I love the name. It's thepastfinder.wordpress.com. And you've been writing about how you got started in genealogy and all kinds of fun stuff. So we're looking forward to success with that.
Yeah, I've had a number of people over the years say, why don't you blog? And I said, well, I'll get around to it eventually. So I decided to do it. And if you want to find out why it's called The Past Finder, look at my first post. Well, heading off to Bellevue, Washington to do a little lecturing over the weekend. I'll check you next week, Fish. And just remember, if you're not a member of any HGS, you can join by using the checkout code EXTREME on AmericanAncestors.org.
All right. Thanks so much, David, and have a great trip. And we'll talk to you again next week. And coming up next, we're going to talk to Paul Woodbury, the DNA specialist from LegacyTree.com, about the most common questions he gets on DNA. That's in 3 minutes on Extreme Genes, America's Family History Show.
Did you know that FamilySearch Family Tree is available through a powerful new mobile app experience? That's right. Now you can view, edit, and even add information to ancestors in your family tree whenever and wherever you are. You no longer need to wait to get home or make a date with your computer to view or update your family tree. You can add details to your tree when visiting with family or when capturing details from a trip to the cemetery. You can share new family history discoveries from classroom settings. You can even make the most of your time when waiting for doctor appointments or car repairs. Get started today by downloading the free FamilySearch Family Tree app to your Apple or Android device. Visit FamilySearch.org/tree app to get the Family Tree app for free. Exploring and expanding your family tree has never been more convenient. Visit FamilySearch.org/tree app to download the FamilySearch Family Tree mobile app today.
Legacy Tree Genealogists is a proud sponsor of Extreme Genes. Based in Salt Lake City, Utah, near the world's largest family history library, we've been working with genealogists all over the globe since 2004 to track down records, find your ancestors, and the stories that bring your legacy to life. We also analyze DNA test results, help you join lineage societies, and find missing cousins or heirs to property. Legacy Tree is the recommended research partner of MyHeritage.com and is the world's highest client-rated genealogy firm. Call us toll-free at 1-800-818-1476. Call now or register online to get a free estimate. Learn from our free genealogy tips on our blog at legacytree.com/blog. Even experienced researchers can benefit from our proven and experienced staff of specialists who can bring new approaches to old problems. Legacy Tree Genealogists. We do the research. You enjoy the discoveries. legacytree.com.
Extreme Genes is sponsored in part by 23andme.com, a personalized genetic service that helps you understand what your 23 pairs of chromosomes, your DNA, say about you. 23andme.com gives you a snapshot view of your DNA with more than 60 detailed reports on your health, traits, and ancestry, plus tools to explore and compare your DNA with family and friends. 23andme.com is the first and only genetic service available directly to you that includes reports that meet FDA standards. Here's how it works. Order your DNA kit from 23andme.com. Provide your saliva sample from home and mail it back to a CLIA-certified lab. Then you'll be notified when your reports are ready online. You'll also receive ongoing reports as new genetic discoveries are made and as 23andme.com is able to clear new reports through the FDA. See why more than 1 million people are experiencing their genetics with 23andme.com. Order your DNA kit today at 23andme.com.
Hey, we love talking DNA at Extreme Genes. It's America's Family History Show. I am Fisher, your radio root sleuth, and this segment is brought to you by 23andme.com DNA. And we've got my friend Paul Woodbury back on the line from legacytree.com. He is their DNA specialist. How are you, Paul? Good to have you back.
I am doing great. Thanks so much for having me, Fish.
You know, we had a segment a month or so ago where we started getting into some of the common questions that you hear all the time about DNA. I mean, it went so fast that it's like, okay, we got to visit this one more time. And the list of questions seems to have grown just a little bit.
Yes. And really, it's interesting because when we get questions about DNA, predominantly, it's about ethnicity. People are really interested in ethnicity. They're interested in finding out about those percentages, about the admixture. And ethnicity is great. Ethnicity does bring lots of people into the DNA testing pools.
Right.
It's a great motivator for bringing people and to really help us grow these databases to individuals who are interested in family history and finding out about ethnicity. However, we can lose the main focus on genealogy if we focus so much on ethnicity. And so really the majority of the questions we get are ethnicity, ethnicity, ethnicity.
Right.
And there is so much more that you can do with your DNA test results beyond just ethnicity.
All right. Well, let's get to the most obvious one. First of all, people get results they don't expect. For instance, my buddy whose grandfather was a full Italian, and when he got his results, he had 3% Italian and some large percent of Greek ancestry. What do we tell people like this?
So with the ethnicities that you get, I look at ethnicities as informative regarding the first 3 to 4 generations of your ancestry. If you have predominantly New England ancestry, you're probably going to get lots of ethnicity from the British Isles, from Western Europe, and because it's been so long ago that your ancestors immigrated to the U.S., it's really hard to differentiate between all of those different Northwestern European countries. Each of the companies are very good at distinguishing between broad geographic categories, like Native American versus European versus African. It's when you get into some of those populations within broader categories that it gets a little bit interesting. And it's a little bit more difficult to distinguish between what is Western European versus British versus Scandinavian.
And I think we talked a little about, for instance, Eastern France gets a lot of Germanic DNA, and Southern France gets more Spanish and Portuguese DNA mixed in. So the question is, what is French, right?
Exactly. And so with the different companies, you're going to get different ethnicity estimates because they're using different reference populations. They're using different algorithms to look at those. And so really, when you're looking at ethnicity results, you don't want to get caught up on the details. Is the information that you're seeing representative broadly of your general ancestry? If you have a Danish father and you have 5% Scandinavian DNA, that might be an anomaly that you want to pay attention to. If you have an Italian grandmother and you only have 4% Italian DNA, that would be an anomaly you would want to focus on. Or the other way, if you have 50% Italian DNA and you only have one Italian grandmother, then you would be wanting to focus in on those major anomalies. I would not consider a variation of a few percentage points, say 10 to 15%, an anomaly. And that's because the amount of DNA that you inherit from your great-grandparents is going to be variable. You can expect to see a little bit of variation within those populations that you are inheriting DNA from.
All right. Now, Paul, I recently shared some DNA test results with a different company, and I wound up with like 75% Scandinavian, while the other company gets me close to 50. I know myself to be 50% Scandinavian. What can account for that difference from one big company to another?
So with Scandinavian, we always have a little bit of a challenge, and that's because a lot of these ethnicity results are looking at mutations along your DNA, and they're looking at the incidence of those mutations in different populations. Well, many of those mutations are representative of populations from thousands of years ago. And so the combination of those mutations will sometimes result in higher levels of expected DNA in a certain population. In the case of Scandinavia, we've got the Vikings coming down into the British Isles, all throughout Western Europe, and they had a very strong genetic footprint on the genetic history of Europe. We also see with the Vikings, Normans are Vikings. They're
right.
Norsemen or Northmen, and so they were settled in that part of France, and then they came over and took over Britain. So you have a huge influence genetically from Scandinavia throughout Western Europe and the British Isles and Ireland. So with Scandinavian in particular, a lot of the times we will get higher than normal estimates, particularly if your other part of your family tree comes from Britain or from Western Europe.
And that's the case for myself, so I'm glad you clarified that, because I hear this question all the time coming to me, and I love to defer to people like you. All right, so let's move past ethnicity. I think we may have even repeated a little material that we've talked about in the past, but I think it's certainly worth repeating. What are some of the other questions you hear pretty often, Paul?
So another question that we often will get and that people will come to us with is, I look at my genetic match list and I don't recognize any of these people.
Yeah.
and I think that that's really key. And with the questions that we get, they are predominantly dealing with ethnicity, but occasionally we will get these gems that can really reveal a little bit more about how you actually use autosomal DNA for genealogical research. And some of the questions that we should be asking, rather than why do I have 25% Scandinavian versus my 50% that I should, really the questions we should be asking are, who are your closest genetic cousins,
Yep.
and how are they related to you? And that's really the starting point of how you begin to use your DNA test results for your family history. And so it's a really good idea to go into your DNA match list and just to start working from the beginning. Who is this closest genetic cousin that I have? Once you identify that person, that information can be really helpful. And once you identify their exact genealogical relationship to you, you can use that information to then filter and organize the rest of your results. Because you can use that information to say, oh, well, I know how they're related to me.
Right.
And I'm not really interested in researching my paternal grandfather's family right now. So knowing that I am related to them through my paternal grandfather, I can then identify all the people that also match that person.
Sure, that makes sense.
And exclude them from my analysis. And then I can really focus on those people that are most important for helping me to make genealogical discoveries.
Now, a couple of years ago, I was helping a dear friend of mine who was adopted, and because we were able to determine what her birth mother's line looked like, then we were able to exclude those lines as we went to work trying to identify the birth father, and it worked brilliantly. And we were able eventually to come up with both the birth father, the birth mother, who are both deceased, and find a living half-sibling on both sides that she now has a great relationship with.
Yeah, and so really working with those close matches to identify how they possibly could be related to you is a great first step to using autosomal DNA test results in the exploration of your family history.
Well, that's great advice, and it's something people need to think about as they get into it. The one thing that bothers me, though, about a lot of my matches is they haven't put in any trees, or they lock it up, and you can't access that information, and then they don't want to respond, you know?
That's another excellent question that we should be asking ourselves. Who is this person that is a close genetic cousin to me and who has no tree, who has no information, and who won't respond? And there are some great approaches that you can take to exploring genetic matches. For example, there are currently 4 major autosomal DNA databases.
Yep.
If you look at the username of the person that you're trying to figure out who they are, a lot of the times people use usernames from their email address. They may use the same username in multiple social media accounts. So if you perform a search on Spokeo for that username, then it will pull up social media accounts associated with username. You can find out the name of that person. If they have a unique name, you can perform public record searches for that individual. You can also use that username and perform a search to find out if they have published any information on genealogy forums. They may not have published a tree, but they may have posted on a genealogy forum and said, I'm searching for information about my third great-grandmother so-and-so.
Sure.
And using that information, you can then trace the descendants of that person and identify the likely identity of that genetic cousin who just will not respond to your requests for collaboration.
Or you could simply find an obituary from a grandparent, and now you're back a couple generations, and suddenly, you just do the normal stuff, and you can figure out who they are.
Exactly. And another tip that I have found is a lot of the times they will not have a tree attached to their test results. But if you search for their username at other genealogy companies, you may be able to find a tree that they have made, but they just haven't attached to their results.
Yeah, that's great advice. All right, we're going to take a break here coming up in just a few moments here. Paul, what kind of questions you want to cover here in the next segment?
I'd like to talk about looking at how people are related to each other. I think that's really key, and it's often overlooked. So identifying groups of related individuals and then estimating how you might be related to those groups. And then the other thing that I would recommend would be if you take a DNA test and you show up as a genetic cousin to a known relative, and it says that your second cousin's once removed, and you say, oh, look, DNA proved that we share these common ancestors. I think it's important that people evaluate the amount of shared DNA that they have with their close relatives to determine if there's any possibility that their relationship is a half relationship versus a full relationship.
Interesting. And there are reasons for that, and we'll get into it. Coming up next in 5 minutes on Extreme Genes, America's Family History Show.
Scientific studies have proven that youth who know even a little bit about their family history perform better academically and have a greater sense of personal confidence and stability. Genealogy is its own incredible superpower that arms our children with super strength. But how do you get your child or grandchild interested in studying their family history? That kind of stuff is just for grandmas, right? Not anymore. ZapTheGrandmaGap.com leaps the generation gap in a single bound. Author Janet Hovorka provides you with useful and timely advice on helping the young people in your life become engaged in their own family history. Janet has an entire collection of books to inspire the young and the young at heart in fun, interactive ways. She also offers creative tips and advice on her blog and in her free weekly newsletter. Stop by ZapTheGrandmaGap.com today to sign up for Janet's free email newsletter with 52 weeks of easy tips, free downloads, and order your set of resource books and workbooks. Looking for an easy way to show off your family history and share it with your family? Family Chartmasters offers beautiful custom pedigree art pieces and inexpensive family reunion draft charts in any design or size that fits your needs. With a free consultation at FamilyChartmasters.com, you can get started creating a new family masterpiece. Family Chartmasters has over 11 years of experience in creating and printing family charts. They can print any style of genealogy chart from any genealogy file and can create exactly what you're looking for. You'll work with a specialized and talented consultant whose goal is to make you happy. Decorative charts make fantastic gifts for all occasions. And with Family Chartmasters' option of ordering duplicate charts at half price along with your original purchase at full price, you can afford to give a family heirloom to each member of your family. Contact Family Chartmasters today at FamilyChartmasters.com for your free consultation. Family Chartmasters will give the greatest care to your family history.
And we are back talking DNA on Extreme Genes, America's Family History Show, and extremegenes.com. Fisher here, your radio root sleuth. And this segment is brought to you by myheritage.com. We're talking to Paul Woodbury, the DNA specialist with legacytree.com. And we're talking about the most common questions Paul gets. And maybe I'll throw this one at you myself, Paul. Recently, I was looking at a new DNA result that showed up as a match for me on one of the major companies. And it came in as a third cousin, which is exactly where it should have been. I've been in touch with his sister for probably 15, 20 years now. She's also a third cousin, but she came in with her DNA results as a fourth cousin to me. How do you explain that?
All right. So with siblings, each sibling inherits 50% of their autosomal DNA from each parent, but they're going to inherit slightly different portions of their parent's DNA. Siblings will share about 50% of their DNA in common with each other, meaning that they get 25% of the same DNA from each of their parents.
Right.
So with these differences of the DNA that siblings will inherit, sometimes a sibling will get more segments or a larger portion of DNA from a specific ancestor than the other one. That is common. Now, when they are estimating the relationship between two individuals, they have certain thresholds that they use to say, okay, if a person matches another individual with more than this amount of DNA, then we consider them to be a third or fourth cousin. If they share less than that amount of DNA, then they get bumped into the next category where they're saying, okay, maybe they're a fourth to sixth. Depending on if they are right on that threshold, then they can get bumped from one category to the other. And that's not necessarily indicative that one is a half relative and the other isn't. It's just that one individual inherited slightly more DNA than the other. But that brings up an important point of DNA analysis, in that just because you share DNA with a proposed relative doesn't necessarily prove a relationship. For example, if I take a DNA test, my second cousin takes a DNA test, and we come back as genetic cousins, that doesn't prove that we are full second cousins. What you want to do, in particularly for close relationships, is you want to go in and look at the exact amount of DNA that you share. Each of those levels of shared DNA are typical of ranges of relationship. So if I'm sharing 200 centimorgans of DNA, then that is much more indicative of a second cousin relationship versus if I'm only sharing 100 centimorgans, that's indicative of a second cousin once removed or a half second cousin relationship.
Sure.
So you want to check and see exactly how much DNA you're sharing. You can find tables on what the expected levels of shared DNA for different proposed relationships are at the International Society of Genetic Genealogy. That's ISOGG.org, ISOG.org. And they have a table that describes what you would expect for different levels of relationship. Another great resource for interpreting and evaluating your shared DNA is the Shared Centimorgan Project, headed by Blaine Bettinger. And they have some studies into looking at exactly how much DNA different known levels of relationship are expected to share.
Interesting. Now, I have a half-second cousin, somebody who came through my great-grandfather, but not my great-grandmother. We had different great-grandmothers. But he came in as a fourth cousin, which I thought was interesting at the time the results came through. If we get into these shared levels, might that give us a little more insight on why there's such a difference?
Yes, and with half relationships, you need to recognize that if there is a half-second cousin, for example, then with half relationships, what I like to do is just add one more generation, and that's what you're expecting to share DNA with. So if it's a half-second cousin, you'd expect a second cousin once removed. And once you get to about that level, there's a little bit of overlap between what we expect to see between a third cousin versus a fourth cousin, or a fourth cousin versus a third cousin once removed. There are some levels of relationship that have very specific and discrete probabilities of relationship and that have very clear ranges of what we would expect. Whereas once you get further out, the amount of DNA that you share with a fourth cousin could be exactly the same as the amount of DNA that you share with a fifth cousin or a sixth cousin. And so it gets a little bit more messy the further you get out.
Sure.
But particularly for those close relationships, you should definitely be evaluating, is this what I expect given our proposed relationship?
So would you find a fourth cousin level to be reasonable for a half-second cousin?
For that level, I would have to look at it, and you'd have to look at exactly the amount of shared DNA, because the fourth cousin designation at some of the companies can range anything less than 70 centimorgans. But 70 centimorgans could be a second cousin once removed, or it could be a third cousin. So it's a little bit hard. It may be that you just inherited less DNA in common.
Right.
But if they're sharing only 20 centimorgans, then there might be something that we want to take a look at in that line to see if there's a possibility of misattributed paternity somewhere along those lines.
Sure, absolutely. All right, what are some of the other common questions you get, Paul? We've still got a little time.
All right, so another common question that we get is, how can I use my DNA test results for genealogy, and how can I make genealogical discoveries a little bit further back with that? And really, I think that the key to making genealogical discoveries a little further back is what I call genetic networking. It's just identifying how all of my genetic cousins are related to each other. Each of the DNA testing companies provide that information to researchers. They will indicate what matches also match your matches.
Right.
So if I'm looking at my second cousin, my genetic cousin, and I look and see all of this list of other matches that share DNA with him, then I know that those other matches are probably related through the same ancestral couples that we share in common.
Is that the DNA circles type of concept that Ancestry is doing right now?
Exactly. DNA circles and new ancestor discoveries are excellent examples of DNA networking, of identifying networks of related individuals that you can group together and say, these individuals are likely related through this common ancestral couple. Now, Ancestry does that with their entire database, but you can do that with your own test results as well. Just by looking at those in common with matches and identifying who matches who, you can begin to identify groups of related individuals, and then you can assign those groups to portions of your family tree. Once you do that, then you can identify a group of matches who have no known relationship to your family and who maybe all have ancestry from an area where one of your ancestors came from. As you explore that group of matches and identify how they're related to each other, you can identify likely relatives of your ancestors and sometimes even get ancestral candidates to then trace forward in time and identify descendants who were your ancestors.
Right. I just wish I'd paid more attention at science in high school right now. I'm just listening to this going, wow, I'm sure we're blowing a lot of people's minds about what it might take to really get in deep in the weeds with DNA. But nonetheless, a lot of people are doing exactly that. And it's a whole other element to family history and genealogical research. Paul, thanks so much for coming on. And I know there are more questions we will have to get to on a future show. And we hope you have a great summer, and we'll talk to you again soon.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Paul Woodbury from LegacyTree.com. And coming up for you next, Tom Perry talking preservation on Extreme Genes, America's Family History Show.
Legacy Tree Genealogists is a proud sponsor of Extreme Genes. Based in Salt Lake City, Utah, near the world's largest family history library, we've been working with genealogists all over the globe since 2004 to track down records, find your ancestors, and the stories that bring your legacy to life. We also analyze DNA test results, help you join lineage societies, and find missing cousins or heirs to property. Legacy Tree is the recommended research partner of MyHeritage.com and is the world's highest client client-rated genealogy firm. Call us toll-free at 1-800-818-1476. Call now or register online to get a free estimate. Learn from our free genealogy tips on our blog at legacytree.com/blog. Even experienced researchers can benefit from our proven and experienced staff of specialists who can bring new approaches to old problems. Legacy Tree Genealogists. We do the research. You enjoy the discoveries. LegacyTree.com.
Extreme Genes is sponsored in part by 23andme.com, a personalized genetic service that helps you understand what your 23 pairs of chromosomes, your DNA, say about you. 23andme.com gives you a snapshot view of your DNA with more than 60 detailed reports on your health, traits, and ancestry, plus tools to explore and compare your DNA with family and friends. 23andme.com is the first and only genetic service available directly to you that includes reports that meet FDA standards. Here's how it works. Order your DNA kit from 23andme.com. Provide your saliva sample from home and mail it back to a CLIA-certified lab. Then you'll be notified when your reports are ready online. You'll also receive ongoing reports as new genetic discoveries are made and as 23andme.com is able to clear new reports through the FDA. See why more than 1 million people are experiencing their genetics with 23andme.com. Order your DNA kit today at 23andme.com.
Well, Genies, my personal family history researcher who sends me new information day and night has sent me some incredible new records and newspaper stories lately. Hi, it's Fisher, and the name of that researcher, by the way, is myheritage.com. It's the hardest working service in genealogy, looking for records of your family 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Yes, even while you're sleeping. How does it work? MyHeritage uses hundreds of algorithms to match your ancestors to over 5 billion records from around the world, and with 97% accuracy. That means no more wasting time figuring out whether or not a match really is a match. I hear from listeners all the time who are shocked with how much information is accurately found and then passed along. And now MyHeritage will translate your ancestors' names into English or any other language you like from foreign records. In fact, it works with over 40 languages. No one else does this. Whether you're a beginner or seasoned researcher, you need myheritage.com. All right, I can already see smoke coming out of the ears of Tom Perry, our Preservation Authority. Hey, it's Extreme Genes, America's Family History Show, and ExtremeGenes.com. It is Fisher here, your radio root sleuth. And this segment of the show is brought to you by LegacyTree.com. Yeah, we're talking preservation. Tom, what is on your mind? What has got you so beat red?
Oh, it's just crazy. I was just talking to somebody off the street the other day and start talking about family history. He pulls out his Samsung Android and says, oh, yeah, I've got thousands of pictures on this over the last so many years, and I'm just worried what happens if I lose this. I stopped and said, as long as everything's up in the cloud, you're fine. When you get your new device, you just download it. And he goes, I don't do the cloud.
Now, why wouldn't he do the cloud?
I don't know. It's like saying, I don't drink water, you know?
Is this somebody afraid of the security side of things or something? One of those people?
No.
They'll break into the cloud.
Not really. I mean, I run into people that just haven't done it. And it's one of those things you need to do now, whether it's preserving your old photos or whatever. But something as easy as a phone, all you need to do is go set up a cloud account. And one I like is Dropbox, and they give you so much for free.
Sure.
So set up your device to automatically, anytime you're near a Wi-Fi, it just automatically starts uploading. So the first one you want to do, you want to make sure, it's at a Wi-Fi at your house so you can start uploading it quickly. But anytime you're taking pictures out in a cemetery away from phone service or whatever, as soon as you get close to Wi-Fi, it'll automatically start uploading them so they're all there. So when I bought phones, it's usually not because one crashed. It just started getting old and slow. And so when I get a new phone, I just download everything down to my new phone, and it's just like nothing ever went away. It's all right there.
Of course.
But one of the neater things about it is not only is it in the cloud, it gives us the convenience when we get to work. If we need to access a photo or any kind of documents, they're there on our work computer. If we are home, they're there on our home computer. Anytime you're hooked up to the internet, you can access your stuff that's in the cloud. And it's free, and if you have a ton of stuff, it's still pretty cheap.
It's the greatest deal of the 21st century. There's no question. Free storage. or cheap storage. I mean, really, if you want to expand, for instance, on Google Drive, it's just $2 a month.
Oh, yeah.
To get to the next level or something like that. It's crazy.
We have terabytes worth of information on ours because we have all of our own stuff. We have a lot of clients that want us to upload stuff to their Dropbox. So it's pretty big. And I don't think we pay $100 a year. And we have way more than anybody's ever going to need.
You know, and this is one of those simple things to step up to if you're not particularly savvy when it comes to technology. The cloud is an easy thing that pretty much anybody can show you how to do, show you how to work. And again, it's free.
Oh, yeah. And, everybody says, oh, there's a hook of free. It's free for 30. No. Dropbox has X amount of storage, which is fine for probably 75% of the population, and it is totally free. And like I say, as much as we do, I think we pay $100 a year, which is hardly anything. And like you say, anybody can teach you how to do it. Whether you're AT&T or T-Mobile or whoever you're with, go into that service and say, hey, can you show me how to do that? And 9 out of 10 times, if they're good people, they're just going to take it, set it up for you, hand it back to you, and say, you're rocking and rolling.
There you go. It's that easy. And then you could save it. Because, you really think about how easy it would be to lose it. The guy you were talking about with the cell phone. You lean over a toilet and it goes into the water. It's done. Years and years worth of photographs and memories and whatever else.
And we've talked about ways that if it falls in the toilet, there might be a way to recover it by putting it in a Ziploc bag with uncooked rice.
Well, who wants to go through that?
Exactly.
I mean, really?
Exactly. I mean, who wants to go through that? You're exactly right. I've got another friend that told me last week that they dropped their phone in a pond and they didn't have the cloud either. So, I mean, there's no way to recover that, unless you want to go scuba diving for it.
And even then, is it going to work after you do the whole rice treatment? Forget about it. The guy you're dealing with is not thinking this thing through very well, obviously.
Right. And it's not a money problem either because, this person is doing very well. If he went the $100 a year type thing, it'd be nothing for him, but he doesn't even need to do that. You just need to get off your tail and get it done.
All right. What do you want to talk about in the next segment here, Tom? Now that you've got that off your chest.
Let's talk about the way to preserve some of your PDFs and some fun things to do with PDFs.
All right. Coming up in 3 minutes on Extreme Genes, America's Family History Show.
Looking for an easy way to show off your family history and share it with your family? Family Chartmasters offers beautiful custom pedigree art pieces and inexpensive family reunion draft charts in any design or size that fits your needs. With a free consultation at FamilyChartmasters.com, you can get started creating a new family masterpiece. Family Chartmasters has over 11 years of experience in creating and printing family charts. They can print any style genealogy chart from any genealogy file and can create exactly what you're looking for. You'll work with a specialized and talented consultant whose goal is to make you happy. Decorative charts make fantastic gifts for all occasions. And with Family Chartmasters' option of ordering duplicate charts at half price along with your original purchase at full price, you can afford to give a family heirloom to each member of your family. Contact Family Chartmasters today at FamilyChartmasters.com for your free consultation. Family Chartmasters will give the greatest care to your family history.
When was the last time you heard your grandmother's voice or saw your family enjoying life back in the 1950s or 60s? If the reason is you haven't known what to do with your old recordings, videos, and films, here's your answer. The Multimedia Center in Salt Lake City.
We brought in a video project to the Multimedia Center, and overnight they duplicated it to DVD so we could meet our deadline.
The Multimedia Center, 2870 East, 3300 South, Salt Lake City. Open Monday through Friday, 10 to 6. Call 801-483-1717 or go to transferduplication.com.
Genies, it's Fisher with exciting news. The Weekly Genie, the official newsletter of Extreme Genes, is here. It's your Monday morning briefing on what's happening in the world of genealogy and family history and on Extreme Genes. Get all the details of jaw-dropping stories of discovery and keep up with the latest techniques in family history research. Get to know more about your favorite Extreme Genes personalities. And it's free. Sign up for the Weekly Genie now at extremegenes.com or the Extreme Genes Facebook page. And when you do, you'll receive David Allen Lambert's Top 10 Tips for Beginning Genealogists from the Chief Genealogist of the New England Historic Genealogical Society. Sign up today for the Weekly Genie. And we are back. It's America's Family History Show, Extreme Genes at extremegenes.com. Fisher here, your radio root sleuth, along with Tom Perry from tmcplace.com, the Preservation Authority. And now that Tom has let it all out in the previous segment, it is time to get down to some other business, and that is talking about PDFs. And this is such a great, simple thing for your use in family history.
Absolutely. I can almost guarantee anybody that has a computer out there has at least one PDF. And people don't understand how powerful those are. PDF stands for Portable Document Format. So it's something that's very portable, and the quality 9 out of 10 times is good. You're not going to want to make giant banners and posters from them generally, but I know people that do. It's mostly a way to store things. And the neat things that people don't know about PDFs, say somebody sends you a file that's a PDF that's, Aunt Martha's family history, and you're going through it, and maybe she didn't remember some things right and some things are a little bit wrong or inaccurate. You can go into, if you have PDF Pro, which is an editor, which isn't very expensive. If you have the cloud service, you get it for free. It's included with it. And all you have to do is go over, and there's a little tab on the right side that says Tools, bring it down, and it allows you several different things. You can actually go click on the text, and it'll say, do you want to make this so you can edit it? And if you want to do that, just click it, and it will go through the entire document, or just one page if you want to just do one page, and make it recognizable so that you can go and click, and then in red next to whatever's in black and say, this is really Aunt Ethel. This wasn't Grandma Clem that did this.
Okay.
So you can make notes on it. Another thing you can do is if for some reason it's a locked document and you can't actually change the lettering, for some reason somebody locked it, it will let you go in and add outside text, put a text box that you can put on it. You can go in and highlight areas if you want this to be highlighted in yellow because somebody's reading through it. This is something that's very important. There's all kinds of different things you can do, and once it can be recognized that way, you can go and make it searchable. So if you have 30 pages of a journal or 100 pages of a journal and you want to find out, what was Dad's thoughts when I was born, you can go and type in your name or birth or your birth date, and it will go and find that, and then you can read what Dad wrote in his journal the day you were born.
That's amazing. And, PDFs are largely used to preserve Word files. For instance, if you were to type up a history in Word, as most of us do, and you want to send it to somebody else, typically if you sent it in Word format, it gets changed somehow, messed up a little bit. So we save it as PDFs, and then it goes and it holds its place. Although I will say this, I went to publish my mother's history that way, having created a PDF, and I found out the apostrophes turned into double apostrophes for some reason through PDF, and we had to go in and correct it.
Oh, yeah, stuff like that happens. When I'm working on my web page, sometimes I type things in Word, and then I transfer my web page, and it makes an @ symbol instead of a bullet or something.
Right.
So you need to make sure you go back and proof it. But once you save it as a PDF, it should stay in that format when you send it to somebody else. And one really neat thing about PDFs that a lot of people don't know about, if you have a huge photo album and you want to send it to somebody, but you didn't do TIFF because you knew they were going to be too big, so you did JPEGs, and they're really good quality, but they're big also. They don't need the quality. They're not going to be making big prints out of it. Then you can take all those photos that are separate photos, go into the edit mode where it says create a PDF from other files or folders, go and select all those files. You'll go and take all the photos, make them into one big file, and then if it's still too big, which is probably not, you can go in and ask for a reduced size PDF, which is even smaller. And PNGs are so much bigger than PDFs, which most people think is the opposite way around. But PDFs are great. I know a sign company that we work with that's what they require us to send them. It has to be full size, but we send them PDFs and they look beautiful.
Wow. Well, that's a great tip, Tom, because I don't think we've ever talked about that before, but I think that could save people a lot of trouble. Thanks for coming on. We'll see you again next week.
My pleasure.
And that is a wrap for this week's show. Thanks so much for joining us. Thanks once again to Paul Woodbury from LegacyTree.com for coming on and answering some of those common questions that we get about DNA. Maybe you'll want to listen to it again on the podcast. Catch it on iTunes, iHeartRadio, ExtremeGenes.com, and TuneIn Radio. Don't forget also to sign up for our weekly Genie newsletter at ExtremeGenes.com. All through the month of June, people who sign up are entered to win a free DNA kit. Talk to you again next week. Thanks for joining us. And remember, as far as everyone knows, we're a nice, normal family.